Welcome, Sumedha ji, to our show Authors and Books. Sumedha V Ojha ji has written a very brilliant book, and as we have discussed earlier, so the title of this book is Urnabhih. So, Sumedha ji, let's quickly get to this. So, why this Urnabhih? What does it mean? And if you could tell us about the trilogy which you are doing, and how many books of this trilogy are out?
Okay. So Urnabhi is Tadbhav of the Sanskrit word Urnabhi, which means spider's web. A spider's web is a very natural description of a spy network. This whole story revolves around the spy network of Acharya Chanakya and of the Mauryan Empire. But it is also from, it's an Upanishadic a shlok. So it is, the spider from which the web comes out and then it comes back into the stomach of the spider. So this is like Maya, which can be spread and removed at the divine will, at the will of Paramatma. So it's also my way of referring to Maya and of referring to the very earthly realm of the Mauryan kingdom, which is why I called it Urnabhi. The name was suggested by my mother, who has always been a guiding light in my intellectual endeavors and everything. So this, I must give the credit to her. This book started out not as a trilogy in the beginning. I just wrote it because there was a lot inside me which wanted to come out. I just wrote the first book. I also wrote the second book, but now I have decided that perhaps it's time to end it with the third book, which is called The Waters of the Mauryans. And I'll tell you why. Because legend has it that the emperor in my story, Chandragupta Maurya, he ascended the throne at the age of 25. And after 25 years, or maybe say after 20 years or something, there was a huge famine and huge drought in the area of the Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta and the empire fought with it. We have certain inscriptions, etc., which tell you how the state dealt with this famine. But it is said that Chandragupta Maurya himself was then very much influenced by his Jain preceptor. And, the general uselessness of material endeavors got to him. He started thinking more about moksha, and therefore he gave up his throne and went and became a Jain monk. It is famous that he actually gave up his life at Shravanbelagola in Karnataka. So I thought it would be fitting if this third book, which revolves around the water shortage and drought in the Mauryan Empire, that would be the last one. Also, Mauryans are supposed to be a hydrological empire. That means, like the ancient Egyptians, like the pharaohs, a lot of the empire depended on water, irrigation, agriculture, and their prosperity depended on water. For us, for everyone, it does. But for ancient kingdoms, it was even more important. And there were some kingdoms which were the fulcrum was water, irrigation, and agriculture. And the Mauryans were one of these. So therefore, I started with the ascension of Chandragupta to the throne, and I will end with his abdication of the throne.
So when is your two parts of this trilogy are out? So when can we expect the third part to be published?
The third part should come next year. There are some very, very exciting developments happening about which I cannot talk right now because they are confidential, and I'm kind of, under orders not to talk. But because of all those things, I am to finish this manuscript and give it by April. So hopefully it should be out next year.
But you were never a student of, you did your economics in Lady Shriram College, right?
Yes. And then sociology.
And then sociology. And you have written a book which has a historical, context, which is basically, which has a, so how come this, transition? And especially because you have, the kind of detailing which you have done, I think it's amazing actually. I'm not exaggerating. It's amazing. Myself, an author, I have done more than a dozen books, but this is I think after a very very long time, I think probably I have read, and especially in the modern era, I haven't seen this kind of detailing with, and the kind. So I'm intrigued basically because how did you manage this and why?
Well, thank you for your kind words and thank you for the validation, because a lot of the hard work I do is to bring an authentic picture of Mauryan times before all of us. I call myself the unofficial ambassador from the Mauryan court to modern India. And a lot of the really very, sometimes it's like an 18-hour work day. So I do this because I want people to know the real Mauryan Empire. How you ask me about economics, history, sociology, how did I land onto history? So, Arunji, the thing is that the life is not divided into disciplines. We have made certain names for certain things. What was my entry point into this entire thing? It was the Arthashastra. At the young age of 12, I was introduced to the Arthashastra, obviously in a very truncated form, and I just fell in love with the book. So that was the reason I studied economics. And that was the reason I studied sociology. And that was the reason I have researched history through my years. Because the Arthashastra is an encyclopedia of ancient knowledge. It does not confine itself to one subject. So look at me, for example. I work on papers on Kautilyan geopolitics. I work on papers on Kautilyan public finance. I also work on Kautilyan sociology. And I also write fiction on it. I have had the good fortune to be born in a family where we had a huge library. My mother is multilingual, so I have had access to Indic literature in almost all languages since I was in school. I've read them in translation. So it was very natural for me to keep continuing that. And then, of course, like it happens, one gets into a career, join the civil services. But after a few years, my husband decided to work with the United Nations. So I took leave and came to Geneva. So those 2 years of leave were life changing because I did a lot of research. I wrote this book, and then I realized that bureaucracy was not for me, and I resigned. I did also work for some time with different UN organizations, but I've stopped that too. So I now realize this is my life's work, bringing ancient India in front of everyone today, Indian as well as international. That is my life's work, and that is why uh, I've taken so many pains with Urnabhih, the trilogy. And I would like to say that if you open any page of Urnabhih, take out any sentence, I will probably be able to tell you why I have written it. If it is something dealing with facts, I'll tell you where to find that fact. If it is something dealing with interpretation, I will tell you why that interpretation has been done with evidence. And it may pertain to Indic literary history, in which case I will tell you where it comes from. Is it the Mahabharata? Is it the Ramayana? Is it Kalidas? Is it Bhas? Where does it come from? So you have put your finger on exactly what I think I try to do with this series. Make it detailed and make it authentic. Let everything be there with some evidence behind it. That's my driving force.
So the characters which you have taken, like Pushyamitra, who is head of the spying department, and then the main character, Mr. Casey, in the first part of. Did these characters really exist with the same name, or kind of basically where? How much is this of basically historical facts, and how much creative freedom which you have taken?
So, as I like to say, I write historical fiction, not fictional history. So, there is history, but there are some stories and some imagination on which to hang the entire story. I not am I I'm not only inspired by things which happened as in history, but I am very deeply inspired by the literature of our own country, and especially Sanskrit. Although I do read a lot of Sangam literature also, and I have been influenced by other languages and other books also, but Sanskrit literature has been the source of what I write. So you will find a mixture of history, of literary history, and of literary antecedents in the book. Let's take the protagonist, Mr. Casey. Now, Mr. Casey, who is she? She is one of the two nymphs who was created by Lord Brahma to explicate the art of the Natya Shastra in front of the world. So she is the epitome of the ultimate dancer. The other name for Sukesi. Sukesi, as you can see in the book, is her sister. Then the second thing, she is also the Apsara who, in Kalidas's Abhigyan Shakuntalam, she's the one who rescues the baby Shakuntala. And she's also the one who, when after Shakuntala is abandoned by Dushyant, she takes her away and takes care of her. That's part two. And the third and the most important one is that there is a Sanskrit play called Mudra Rakshas. Mudra Rakshas was written in the 4th century after the Common Era by Shudrak. It is a story of the ascension of Chandragupta Maurya to the throne. I like to think of Urnabhih as a sequel to Mudra Rakshas. So a lot of the characters you will find are either inspired by, based on, or somehow connected to the Mudra Rakshas. Acharya Chanakya, of course, directly. Then you have Siddharthak directly. He's also a spy. Rather not Siddharthak, but Su-Siddharthak. In my book, Su-Siddharthak has become Siddharthak. Siddharthak of the Mudra Rakshas has become Pushyamitra in my book. There are also other characters such as Shnotra. She is also there. So Shnotra is there in Mudra Rakshas, and she's there in my book in the same characteristic as the same character. So you can see how all these things, kind of come together. Take Pushyamitra. He is inspired by the spy chief Siddharthak of Mudra Rakshas. But he is also inspired by the whole Sunga family. He is an ancestor of that Pushyamitra Sunga who assassinated the last emperor of the Mauryans, Brihadrat, and then became the emperor himself. He is from that family. When you read book 2, you will find more details about this family. This was the family of Senapatis of the Mauryans. They were the Sainyas of the Mauryans, and they were hereditary Senapatis. And I like to think that at one point of time, because they were very committed to the Mauryan Empire and to Patliputra and Magad, the Mauryans really degenerated. After Bindusar, I would say Ashok was also a degeneration. And 50 years after Ashok's death, they were in their death throes. And Pushyamitra Shunga took over. So I have to be very clear about this, because sometimes readers ask me, what is this? Pushyamitra Shunga came so much afterwards. Why is he there in your book? He's there in my book because he's an ancestor. Why does he have the same name? Because in those days, it was very, very common for names to be repeated. So Pushyamitra Sunga is from the Sunga dynasty. That is a very important thing for this trilogy, and perhaps books that I will write later, because in the next book, you will also find details of other feudatories of the Mauryans, the Sungas, the Satkarnis, and what was the relation between them? How did it impact the empire? How did it impact post-Mauryan times? So you will find reflections of all these things in the next book and the book after that. And you asked me about history. So
yeah.
in one word, it was my basic fascination with the Arthashastra, with everything that is Indian, a 360-degree ancient Indian view. I research everything and I try to put everything in my book.
So, what would be your advice to do? Because after reading your book, one quick reaction which I can give you is basically one gets very much interested in knowing more about Mauryan Empire, and especially during the period of Chandragupta Maurya and uh, Acharya Chanakya. So, what would you advise? Where to begin with in terms of are there any basic texts which you can suggest to our readers? And I'll club another question with this, that as you said that you have been reading Sanskrit texts, and is it very important? Of course, if you know Sanskrit, then nothing like it because you can read it in original. But how important it is for somebody who wants to write on that era where a lot of Sanskrit literature has been written and not knowing Sanskrit. So, what would be your advice to such people?
Okay, so the first thing, you put two questions together. What was your first question?
My first question was, what are the basic texts you would suggest for somebody who
Oh, okay,
wants
yes,
to
okay. So
begin?
I will not actually suggest anything because I think that there's a lot of misconception and misrepresentation of the Mauryans, and I don't really think I can suggest anything. However, I will say that I have a web series on the Mauryans which is called Maurya Lok. You want authentic information on the Mauryans. Then this Maurya Lok, which is Bharat Kirti channel on YouTube, and I would really like you to put this information out. I have through the Saptang state idea of Chanakya, I have looked at Mauryan history, and that I think will give you a good picture of and background for the books. Again, it is I'm happy to announce that my next work is going to be a short history of the Mauryans. So when I finish writing that book, I will certainly recommend it to everyone that you
So
should
will
read that
we.
book. Now, as far as not knowing Sanskrit and writing history books or historical fiction is concerned, from my point of view, I think it is critically important to know Sanskrit. I think that is my USP. It is because I have read things in the original that I can bring it to you in the true form. If you read translations, it's like, I don't know, it's like a real living horse and a wooden horse head. That is the difference. You basically don't get to see the life, the energy, the meaning of whatever is written. It's like something static and something very, very one sided because some person has read it, understood it in their own way, and they present it to you as a static thing. Sanskrit is dynamic. Not only are all the words important as they are used, the context is important, for which you have to know a lot of ways in which meanings are made in Sanskrit. It's also how whenever you read an original text, it's your response to it which is important, especially if you are a creative person. So understand the meaning authentically, then your creative forces can get to work. So I think that it's critically important. I also, however, realize that everyone does not know and may not be able to learn Sanskrit. So, in which case, I would say rely on secondary sources. And if I'm really pushed to the wall, I will recommend a few books if you're pushing me to the wall. One is, of course, Radha Kumud Mukherjee's book on Chandragupta Maurya and his times. Then the other is the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan series. You can read that. Then, in some parts of his books, Sanjeev Sanyal also has written a bit about the Mauryans here and there, not a full book. But his books on ancient India, whatever they contain about the Mauryans, that is a good idea to read. Again, try and read translations of the Arthashastra. And something which I have written, which I would recommend, is a whole series of articles on Mauryan India in Swarajya magazine. I was a historical columnist there for about 2-3 years. And I've written a whole series of things on the Mauryans, which is going to be useful. Another book which I can again recommend very reluctantly, like you understand, is Upinder Singh's history book till the 12th century. So she does a lot of research. She has a lot of biases. Please ignore the biases or throw them out. But go to the original source that she mentions or to the evidences she mentions. You'll get some kind of an idea. Don't ever read Romila Thapar. You'll get totally the wrong idea about everything. And yeah, I think so. Okay, one more book which I would recommend, not reluctantly, but very, very happily, is the Age of the Nandas and the Mauryas. This is by the one who writes on the Cholas, the South Indian historian K. A. Neelkant Shastri. So the Age of the Nandas and the Mauryas is by K. A. Neelkant Shastri. This I will heartily recommend. So these books should give some kind of basic idea. Otherwise, read Ashokan inscriptions also. Try and read the reconstruction of Megasthenes Indica. There are good English translations by J.W. McCrindle. Then you can read Jain and Buddhist sources, the Mahavansh and the Deepvansh. Again, don't read. There's this a Tibetan monk called Taranath. Please don't read his book because he tends to exaggerate, tell lies. He wrote in the 17th century and he pretended as though he was there and everything was happening in front of his eyes, which it was not. So it's a very popular source for a lot of the leftist and Marxist historians. Please don't read it.
So one more
So
thing.
in
Yeah.
some, let me repeat,
Yeah.
K. Neelkanth Shastri's Age of the Nandas and Mauryas and Radha Kumud Mukherjee's Chandragupta Maurya and his times. Good.
So one last question I would this thing. The one is that because you said that you read Arthashastra at the age of 12. Incidentally, I also happen to be a student of economics. My academic background is in that. So I had managed to pass out from it too. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So we are Delhi University friends. I was from
yes.
Lady Freedom.
Yeah, so the thing is that of course, I've seen Motilal Banarsi Das. They publish some really good, authentic stuff. Basically, when it comes to Indic subjects, but as far as Arthashastra is concerned, so there are multiple translations, available. So, what would you suggest our readers that if they want to read, say, a English translation of Arthashastra, so which translation should they go for? Basically,
You should go for R.P. Kangle. That is the gold standard.
okay.
Volume 1 to 3 of R.P. Kangle. First volume is Sanskrit. Second volume is an English translation for people who want the translation. And the third volume is for people who don't even want to read the whole Arthashastra in detail, but just get an entry into it and get an idea. Because he gives a bird's eye view of everything. There's a chapter on society. There's a chapter on, say, finance. There's a chapter on politics. In the Mauryan period also, although he gives very few Mauryan examples, but it is basically from the manual of the Arthashastra, what does Kautilya say about international relations, etc., etc. So you will find a lot of it in my book because, this book is all about how does this protagonist, this young girl who comes from Ujjain and is a spy, how does she help the great thing that is happening, that is the establishment of the Mauryan Empire. So how does Chandragupta expand his empire? He started from Patliputra to all parts of the subcontinent is dealt with in this book. And in the next book, he's going to expand beyond what we know today as India and Pakistan into Afghanistan. So that's the next book. And in the third book, of course, then we will see more of Chandragupta Maurya. I mean, the end of Chandragupta's reign. Bindusar and Ashoka are still to come. Maybe I'll write on them, I'm not sure. But if you read the Arthashastra, some parts of it you may recognize verbatim because I've picked up a lot from the Arthashastra. So maybe you did, Arunji, because you've read the Arthashastra and you've read book 1. Especially the second part of the book. Now, I don't want to give any spoilers, but in the second part of the book, it's a textbook operation. The destabilization of another kingdom, it's like a textbook operation. So you will find a lot of volume 3 of R.P. Kangle perhaps in my entire series.
Will end with this. Thank you, Sumedha ji. You have been, traveling and you took out this time. And I want to once again, tell my viewers that this is the book. Basically, they should be reading. And once again, many congratulations. It's a brilliant work, and I must congratulate you. And I look forward to, and our, viewers and other readers would also look forward to your. Forthcoming books. I have readers. I have just finished the first part 1, and as we do on authors and books, we actually try to read the complete book and then interview the author. So I've been able to finish the book 1 very soon. I think I'm going to pick up now book 2 because it is it's a page turner, and
Thank
I
you.
will.
I wanted it to be a page turner.
Yeah, it's a, and I would recommend, this book has, intrigue, it has mystery, it has thrill, it has romance. It's a complete, platter, which you get. And
Thank you.
so And it also, I think, breaks the myth that only English might not be our first language, but we can't produce good authors in English. So the prose is brilliant. It's like basically you're actually reading poetry. So and
Arunji, little point here. I do borrow a lot from Sanskrit poetry. So you read book 2, and this is my personal kind of challenge or question to you. Tell me where chapter 1 comes from, which play of
okay.
which person.
Yeah, and when we'll do it on book 2, then we'll also open
Yes,
this contest,
yes,
for our viewers also.
yes,
And
yes.
so
So, the Sanskrit poetry is my great passion. So
I
there's a
can
lot of
see,
it in the Urnabhih
I
series.
could see, it feels, as if you're not reading prose. It's basically, you are reading basically a poetic composition. So I could sense that. That's
Thank
why,
you.
when we had, before the interview, we had a conversation also. So I shared with you, it is brilliant prose, basically. So
Thank you
that
so
was,
much.
it's
Thank
like,
you very much.
it's very musical. It has a rhythm, and it's not very easy to write this kind of especially when you're dealing with spies network. You are dealing with the power struggles in the Mauryan Empire.
And I'll tell you another problem I always have. My mother tongue is Hindi. So I think in Hindi and I write in English.
So
So
that
I think in Sanskrit words and then I write in English. It's really difficult.
तो फिर आप ऐसे ही, अगर उसका आउटकम ये है, तो फिर आप ऐसे ही लिखते रहिए और ऐसे ही सोचते रहिए, जो है। I would
धन्यवाद,
sincerely
धन्यवाद.
advise.
Thank you very much.
जी, तो we'll end up with the end of this conversation now. And Sumedha ji, thank you so much. And for our viewers,
Namaskar. Thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much for watching Authors and Books. And you can share this video, you can like this video, you can subscribe to our channel if you like this video in our channel. And we'll very soon meet with another author and another book, and hopefully very soon with Sumedha ji's second book also. Will have a conversation with her soon. And Sumedha ji, once
That
again,
would be
thank you very
wonderful.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.